Hey everybody. Today I'm going to be reading a couple chapters of The Evil. I'm going to do two chapters today, but just the dog might start barking and cars might drive by really loud, and also I feel like there's bugs hidden behind that painting and I'm too afraid to look. I'm going to keep this close. I keep hearing like a noise and uh, oh god, I fucking hate bugs. So I'm gonna read a couple chapters from my favorite book I've ever wrote. I mean, I wouldn't say my favorite. That's kind of like a stretch, but definitely like my best book I've ever written by far. And I was also thinking about maybe making a review video of all three books and like ranking them. I think that would be. I was already gonna do that in my journal, but I think that would actually make for a pretty good video. So we'll see. I wonder if it's quieter with this off. And also, I was thinking about doing like a interview for this book and have like my family members write down questions and I'll answer them in a video, but we'll see. So, The Evil, the Basement series conclusion, written and illustrated by Tim Skinner. Here's the back. The Evil, the Basement series conclusion. Part 1, Invasion. In Chapter 1, Hi. A huge, warm splotch of light fell down my throat and landed in my stomach. It turned the life-destructive darkness I've lived with to dust. The darkness was internal, but also just a moment. The things that change you the most are like that, untouched by time. A piece of my forehead exploded, allowing my brain chemicals to rise up and dance. My mind and body felt it, the long strands of chemicals levitating toward the sky. They were glowing gold and never seemed to stop. They could have touched the moon, the end of the Milky Way, and the end of the galaxy as we know it. Warmness and contentment expanded in my face, elbows, knees, and everywhere as I smiled and shut my eyes. If I were to explain this magical feeling to my past self, who was broken and locked in a depriving cell, she would call me insane. The thought of light and happiness didn't exist to her. It was a yellow liquid getting poured into a broken glass cup, going straight through the cracks and fading into a black liquid, which was darkness. It's incredible how something torn into pieces can become so beautiful and powerful again. Thank you for getting my soul out of that really dark hole. Just FYI, this is like right after the ending of The Connection. So if you haven't like read The Basement and The Connection, you might be a little bit confused here. Thank you for getting my soul out of that really dark hole, I said to the witches standing around the circled star made of white dust. The three of them slowly dropped their heads and lifted them back up. Let your power override everything, Sarah. Just let it. Okay, I will. Let me get back to the hospital. I have to heal my friends from Larry's mutation. The moon was full and yellowish in the night sky, and it made me feel it again. I felt it engulfing me again, grabbing its hand into my skull and lifting up my slimy, juicy brain. My breath hitched, face tingled, and eyes rolled back as I planted myself on the hard sidewalk and started chuckling. I laughed until my chest hurt because I fucking wanted to. Wiping a tear from my eye, I began crawling on the concrete like a cat and galloping toward the hospital, acting upon my compulsions like using gas to run a car, so charged and full of energy. I jumped about a foot and positioned my hands on the concrete to make room for another giant leap. Laughs bellowed from my abdomen, and, as they released, my body started glowing white. I felt the heat of the glow, and the warmest body part was my brain, so it must have been the brightest. Several cars drove past me and slowed down at my peculiar behavior, but I didn't care. A red Toyota slowed to a stop and the car door opened. I shut my eyes and shot out purple smoke from my brain. It misted over to the vehicle, and I made the purple softly deliver it 2 blocks down. I could do anything, control anything, and feel so fucking good while doing it. I could have lifted 3 cars over my head with my pinky, and it would have taken nothing. I entered the hospital room. I feel like that noise was just the air conditioner. Oliver was passed out with his stomach against the armrest, fingers almost touching the floor, and chin against his chest. Nick was laying on the hospital bed, almost dead. His heart rate was skyrocketing, which didn't make sense because he looked like a corpse. The only thing moving was his stomach, rising and falling manically. His body fighting to stay alive while his consciousness was absorbed into another dimension. I ran up to the bedside and held his clammy hand. A tear fell to my cheek because I wasn't sure if I would ever be in the same room as him again. His beautiful face almost looked green under the light. I shut my eyes and slowly vanished into him, pushing all of myself into his brain, but I wasn't my body anymore. I was white glowing shapes. I spread through his veins, his bloodstream, and eventually traveled into his internal organs, bones, muscles, nerves, and blood vessels, everywhere. His brain gave me so different. His brain gave me so many different sensations and textures. Some sensations were pleasant, like petting the soft fur of a Springer Spaniel. Some were bumpy and sharp. Others would slide your fingers into its depths. Desire, maybe? No. Uncontrolled brokenness. Parts of my glowing shapes touched Nick's eyes, and I saw my human body through them. It was sitting on the floor next to Nick and me. It was smiling and its fingers were glowing. That body I loved because it was a piece of so many things. I exited Nick and floated back to my first vessel. It shook and gasped, but it was me shaking and gasping this time. Nick's body was still slightly glowing. His heart rate went from 119 beats per minute to 97 beats per minute as his breathing pace gradually decreased. I think I need some water. My eyes widened as the skin underneath the stitches in his arm, leg, and back closed and healed. Red slowly appeared back onto his cheeks. His eyes flickered open as he sat up. "Where am I?" he asked, looking drowsy but alive. I smiled and wrapped my arms around him. He held my back. As I dropped my head into his shoulder, he let go, but I kissed his dry, moistureless lips anyway. Couldn't contain myself. Realization shot my face as he looked at his hands. Realization shot his face as he looked at his hands that used to be green from the mutation, then looked over his body that used to throb and give off dreading pain. The only damage, however, was the unneeded stitches sewed into his skin. I was mutated by those fucking clowns. How am I still alive? I opened my mouth to answer, but then gazed at Oliver, who was still passed out in the chair. "How about I just show you?" I shut my eyes and pointed my hand at Oliver, using my power to search for his mutation and grab it out. My power was purple, soft on the outside and hard in the middle. I made it find the green chemical inside his veins and latch onto it, reeling the power back like a fishing pole, and the strands of chemicals coming out got bigger and more complicated. It was mainly green, but with orange and red strands occasionally peering into the mix. The last of it finally fell out of him and landed on the floor. I made my fingertips shoot out fire and aimed it at the pile of chemicals. Smoke filled the room and my fingers were getting hot and red as the chemicals turn to ash. And then chapter 2, Deep, Luna's point of view. It's showing backwards, but I don't know if it's going to be backwards on the video. I hope not. So I'm doing like point of views this book that I've never done before. So this is like Luna's narrating. A tall, bland-looking woman stood in front of a whiteboard wearing a gray top, beige khakis, and black closed-toe shoes. I looked at her with a still smile and wide eyes. She was lecturing us about some atom, but had no emotion or excitement in her voice. It was as boring as reading a fucking dictionary from front to back. A kid looked over at me from behind two other dipshits. I recognized his dark brown hair, face structure, and blue eyes, looking at me deep, like he could see my thoughts. I knew he was full of shit, but also knew what he wanted, because I wanted it too. Hey, you want to do it again later? He eventually whispered. No, Parker, you didn't give me a fucking dime last time, I harshly whispered. But my skill makes up for any payment, you know that, he quietly said before throwing a desiring look then leaning back. My face felt sweaty all of a sudden as I smirked because he was absolutely right. The deepest part of an atom. So deep, I whispered to myself while rolling my eyes back. The top bunk of our bed was squeaking from my roommate kicking her legs while reading a book titled The Art of Narcissism. She always sat there kicking her feet and reading, told me that she could escape into someone else's world that way. A door opened suddenly and an officer started walking down the hall. He stopped in front of our cell and swiped his key card in the blue locking door. Lee, your mother's here to see you, and she's crying up a river. Come with me. The officer locked my wrists behind my back in the same position that the handcuffs were before, making the cuts and scarring around my wrists ache and blister. He locked the chain around my waist and connected it to the handcuffs. Finally, he took out special cuffs out of a locked. Finally, he took special cuffs out and locked them around my ankles, clicking twice. I always found this process so thrilling. Imagining I'm being brought to the officer's bedroom to be dominated. So just a little heads up. There are a couple like edgy lines in here. He walked me through the halls until he opened a door to the visiting room where my mother sat, at the other end of the table. She had dark circles under her eyes, blonde hair sticking straight up, and eyeshadow dripping down to her cheeks. After I sat on the hard-ass chair, After I sat on the hard-ass chair, the officer unlocked my little slut restraints. You've got 30 minutes, Lee, and don't you try pulling anything again, he said while pointing up at a camera on the ceiling. He walked out, throwing another serious look, before letting the door close behind him. A strong scent of smoke, body odor, and alcohol invaded my nostrils. I gagged and blurted, Ugh, God, Mom, you smell like shit. Luna. Sarah came back home after being gone for days and brought all these weird people with her. She told me that my Alice is gone. She spat out in a low, quiet voice before dropping her face in her hands and shaking her head fast, inhaling and sobbing. Shut up, Mom. You look like you're having a damn aneurysm. After a while, she finally lifted her face back up, which was a mess of tears and snot. Tell me exactly what you kids fucking did and why you're in jail. I don't want to hear no stories about killer clown robots or green skin from a mad scientist. I want the goddamn truth. Oh, I'll give you the truth. The five of us were hanging out at Oliver's house when we collectively noticed we had splotches of green skin appearing on our bodies, except Alice. Smug-ass Sarah remembered that Charles, Oliver, she, and I were getting mutated because we touched Larry's slimy little table, and the serum slowly got inside of us from the contact. So we broke into Mary's old house looking for a cure and almost got slaughtered by Larry's evil cult. That was good fun. We stole Mary's old car and drove around unlicensed, during which slouchy Sarah got the call that her mother's dead. A girl named Eleanor texted us and listed the chemicals we needed to make a cure, so we stole them, but the girl really turned out to be an AI that Larry created. I told everyone we couldn't trust the bitch from the beginning, but people just think Luna's fucked up until they're in deep shit and need me, right? I love that line. Eleanor controlled the freaky animatronic clowns and fucked up Nick with them. Then Sarah killed my sister on the way out, so I fucked up Sarah until she bled and told her I would shoot her if she crossed my path again. Then it was time for me to get a pedicure done, but the stupid fucking lady cut my finger, so I slapped her in the hand and face. Oh, and I threw a shopping cart at a man's crappy Mustang. Then they arrested poor innocent me when the lady was the one who cut my fucking hand. And that's how I ended up here. Mom's eyes were huge. You could see all the white around every side of her irises. Her lips were gaped open. And that about sums it up, I said, nodding my head casually. You're welcome. Luna is like my favorite character, I think, that I've ever written. I've ever created. So that was the first 2 chapters. Thank you all for watching. Next time I'm gonna read chapter 3. And I think I'm gonna schedule them to come out. I'm gonna schedule them to come out like a video a day for 3 days. Alright, thank you. Bye.